Welcome back, guys. Maverick here with another episode of March Comes In Like a Lion. So, last episode I got a little bit of a mix-up on my titling and whatnot, so it was actually episode 28, not episode 27. And as you guys can see over here, it's fixed now, right? So, no worries, no problems. Anyways, back into the episode at hand, we are continuing with the Hina bullying arc. The last episode, I guess we had some development here. In particular, it seems that Hina has sort of expanded on her own emotions, if you will, in terms of the regret that she feels, and probably more importantly, the anger that she feels. Because indeed, with the ending of last episode, I got the feeling that Hina is about to explode sometime soon, right? Whether that's true or not, don't really know, but I'm sure that Ray is going to be along the way as a good observer, and I don't know, potentially still directing her rage towards somewhere else, right? That could also be quite productive. But otherwise, well, let's just jump in and find out. Alright, so the opening I skipped, and let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. The rainy season. Having a nosebleed? Why? Got too excited about something? Worked up? Oh. What was that school? Okay. Did she actually lash out in anger? Got overexerted? Maybe too agitated? Something like that? Was that a lie? Hey, at least he was truthful about it. Right back to it. Aw, those are some very, very obedient cats. Oh. Yeah, she... This is... You know, I think in this case, yeah, this is a little bit overboard here. Up to now, I've been mostly calm towards even the bullies and whatnot. Like I said, I mostly view it as a sort of phase through your school life. But being a teacher, no excuse. Yeah, I got no doubt that Grandpa's probably gonna be quite the monster. But honestly, I think Akari can. Oh, oh yeah, I almost forgot about her. Monster of Ginza Street? Is that a Gintama reference? Actually, I think Akari can more than hold her own, right? I mean, working as a hostess at a bar, I'm sure she's seen all kind of conditions before. Although she might have an aversion to conflict. Nice. It's being dependent upon. Oh. It's been a while, Nikaido. I mean, you stop being a newcomer in 5 years, right? Prince of the East. Whatever you say. Been a while since we've seen some actual shogi. Aw. Their friendship is progressing nicely as well.
窓を開けたら川の匂いに混じって雨の匂いがした。
I would love to live somewhere like that, overlooking a river.
ひなちゃんはどうしているだろうか。ちゃんと眠れているだろうか。
本当に頼っちゃうからね。
頑張っても空回る。普通の人にはできることが僕にはできない。力になりたい。それなのにどうやったら力になれるのかがわからない。だけどこれより他にできることを持っていない。だから勝ちたい。勝ちたい。勝ちたい。どこか一つだけでも強い存在でありたい。
Yeah, better not think about it too much, though.
僕は必要とされたい。
See? The feeling of being needed. I think that was indeed one of the aspects that we've sort of already seen from Ray, right? I think a few episodes ago, we saw this tendency from him already. He wants to be needed, wants to be wanted. Especially with everything that happened during his childhood and all that. Not just a place of belonging, but actually being wanted.
いざとなったら本当に頼っちゃうんだからね。
Oh, actually, I think this kind of harkens back to the first season, right? Where I forgot who was it that said it, but basically, you know, he counts on the sisters, and the sisters count on him, right? Well, that wasn't the case back then. Now it's
夕日に照ら
improving to the case.
あかりさんの頬や声が焼き付いて離れない。初めて欲が出た。しかも純粋な欲じゃない。それがいいことなのか悪いことなのかもわからない。ただ今は勝ちたい。どうしても勝ちたい。
Hmm.
新人戦準決勝。この対局に勝てば決勝。対戦相手は
The irritated dude.
八谷昴五段23歳 C 級1組。多分20代若手棋士の中で一番の有望株。早指しを得意とし研究に裏付けられた攻撃的な棋風。舌打ち、貧乏ゆすり、センスならし。ついたあだ名は東のイライラ王子。
That's kind of
この世界は強さが全て。強さがあれば全てが正道。
really. I thought that shogi would have some rules similar to chess, where if you do anything to irritate your opponent, you would be penalized and disqualified.
なんか嫌だ。ご機嫌中飛車か。やっぱりガンガン来る気だな。
Oh my god. If this was me, Honestly, if this was chess, I'd be calling the arbiter immediately. Yeah. And it's not just his opponent as well, it's everybody in the room. I gotta say, the anime is really doing a good job of portraying the irritating sounds that he's making. So, okay. Hmm. It's these, yeah. I mean, I presume on a certain level it's probably deliberate. Yay. Stomps out. や、I was like, most probably, most probably all the other players are really pissed off as well. お Yeah. 'Talk about release of tension, man. Alright, see you guys after this. Alrighty, that was quite the cathartic release at the end there. You know, with the entire episode, we got the first half with the situation with Hina's teacher, and then the second half with, this very annoying, and very irritating dude, who's making all sorts of noises, and Ray also kind of being affected by it as well, although he still managed to keep a calm head in the end there. Like, having that sort of tension release at the very end there was just so funny. And once again, I do have to give the anime props for creating this sort of gap in the tension of the situation, right? So that was indeed a very well executed, how should I say, emotional point, or what? But before we go into that, let's talk through it in chronological order, right? So first of all, the first half we have the part with Hina. I think that pretty much I've already pretty much said all I need to say during the reaction part. Like, to me, what the teacher did was unforgivable. I don't even know if this kind of makes sense to you guys, but for me, what the teacher did was actually even more unforgivable than what the other girls did, the actual bullies. So it might seem kind of weird to you guys, but I think I already mentioned this, that I consider teenagers to basically make mistakes, right? Even though, yeah, sure, you still need to punish them. Don't get me wrong, you still need to actually give them proper punishment. You need to scold them, yell at them, and whatnot when they are doing something wrong. Proper punishment and teachings are needed, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to be holding a grudge against them. I'm not going to make it into something long term, because like I said, they're young, and they are at an age where really a lot of things don't really, you're doing a lot of things that don't really make sense, right? If you go back to when you were at that age, even if you did think, like, I like to think of myself as quite a logical thinker even during that young age, but even then, looking back onto that point, things that I thought were logical at that time don't really make so much sense now that I'm looking back at it 10, 20 years later, right? So the same thing with the students as well, which, yeah, they're doing something really, really shitty, but at the same time, once the situation resolves itself, if it can, then that's great, right? Then they will receive their just dues and whatnot. If nothing happens and they eventually all just graduate and nothing really comes of it, then it's still fine in a certain sense. Like I said, it's just a really small portion of your life. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's not an important part of your life, but it's still, it's something that you can grow out of, right? However, the teacher, being someone in a place of authority and power, and indeed, with this power being vested into them, right? It's an entirely different story. To me, that is unforgivable. I think I seriously think that she should not be a teacher anymore. She should have her teaching credentials resolved because, well, she's not really doing her job properly, right? And if you can't do your job, then why hire you in the first place, right? So even though I know some people might think, hey, how come you're letting those girls off and not letting a teacher off? But to me, that this is a time where I think even I would be completely outraged at the situation. Right, so no words there. These teachers are definitely the worst, right? Like, imagine if someone was robbing yours or whatnot, and then or assaulted you, and you went up to a police officer and said, "Hey, there's so and so," and go arrest him and whatnot. And he's like, "Oh, what the hell? All right, why don't you be in line? Why don't you stop disturbing the peace and whatnot?" Like that, that really gets on my nerves. I do consider them to have a different degree of responsibility here, students versus teachers and other authority figures, right? So I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about that part. In the middle portion, we had the sense of being wanted, again being said by Ray. I think we went over this in the first season already. And if I recall correctly, in that episode, I was making this whole point about how that's actually the best way to build relationships, right? Actually, depending on others and allowing others to depend on you. This sort of give and take is how relationships can actually be formulated. And it's kind of a weird thing. I've had my fair share of trouble actually accepting that, even now to this day. It's something that I learned long after I left school. But it is true, right? That's just the way that human behavior works. I don't really know why. I like to consider myself as quite similar to Ray. Don't really like to make trouble for others. Be self-independent. And just basically be a solid rock, right? And I think that kind of goes towards the latter half of this episode as well, where Ray is not really that forgiving of his opponent, doing all kinds of things to be bothersome, right? Like, I would definitely, I have the exact same thought as he is. I would never put myself in a situation where I'm bothering others, right? It's just, I can't physically or even mentally think of myself deliberately doing that unless it was on purpose, right? If I was trying to use it as a sort of strategy, as a tactic to tilt my opponent, then that's something else, right? But doing this, for no particular reason and just being a nuisance to others, no, I can't do that. So, I guess what I'm trying to say here is I do relate with Ray on a lot of levels. Definitely, I'm not as maybe not as antisocial. Well, I can't say. I'm definitely a bit more outgoing than he is, even though I am still an introvert. But still, definitely not to the extent where he sort of withdraws within his shell, right? Then again, Ray is a shogi genius, right? So what can I say? But yeah. That was basically the part with the being wanted thing. So I did like how it sort of went full circle and referenced back to the earlier episodes here. And of course, the opponent part, again, I kind of find it hard to believe that shogi, especially, for a culture such as the Japanese, where they are really big on politeness and manners and all that, I can't believe that nobody actually calls him out on it, right? That would definitely be unacceptable behavior. I like the closest thing that I'm familiar with is actually chess, and in chess there are actually rules where you cannot do things that distract your opponent, right? And so if someone was to complain that, hey, this guy is making too much noise and whatnot, the referee or the arbiter would actually tell him to stop, and if he doesn't, he will be penalized, disqualified, etc., etc. He might have to forfeit the match. So I would kind of find it really surprising that in shogi this kind of behavior is actually allowed. And with that said, though, I think the end of this episode also kind of gives insight as to why everybody tolerates it. So they do mention that he seems to be beloved, or at least like I said, tolerated by his fellow peers, maybe in part due to his expressiveness, right? The expressiveness of his passion and so on and so forth. And I think that also kind of ties in back with the really, human nature is such a strange thing, right? So my thinking is similar to Ray, right? I like to keep my cards close to my heart. If I have any sort of emotions or whatnot, even if I'm feeling really angry or so what, I'm not going to just come out and make a fit just for the sake of it, right? Unless there's any specific objective that I want to achieve. And for someone like him who does all these things, he's really easy to understand. His emotions are completely being brought out and whatnot. People do. I find it funny because in real life it's the same thing as well. People do seem to be able to understand them more and actually be able to tolerate them more, even though this might not. No, I can get that. Maybe I'm looking too far into this. I'm looking too much into this, considering that it might just be a sort of gag or a funny situation and some humor that they decide to put in the end there. But funnily enough, I actually find it to be very true to real life as well. That those that do kind of put their emotions out there are more easily able to make friends and be accepted and be forgiven than those that generally don't put their emotions out there, right? So yet again, this is something of a life lesson that I learned long after I left school, right? Well, I can't say long after I left school, but definitely after school, right? It is something that I had to consciously make note of, that and the fact that sometimes being a bother, being a burden to others actually helps you helps others open up to you more, as counterintuitive as that seems to me anyways. I don't know, maybe for you guys or for some more extroverted people, this might come completely natural, but for me it's just a very foreign and weird concept that I need to consciously make an effort to do in order to take advantage of. Anyways, that's it for this episode, and well, see you guys next week as well. So stay tuned and bye bye.